I think I made a mistake because I should have thought a bit more when scaling down, because the bolts are opposite one another and I should have staggered them, because the heads are going to foul one another, and that's going to create a bit of a problem. It wasn't necessary on the full size, there was plenty of room. But yeah, one of those problems. Anyway, what I've done so far is I've cut these little pieces of angle, which will act as a guide for the axle boxes, and they are riveted in place. Can't remember whether I bolted the original ones on or not. Probably. I had a standardised 5mm bolt throughout the engine. Anyway, they fit all right. Not too much of a problem, not too difficult to do. And I'm still working on the idea that maybe I'll make it into a running engine, a working one. And I've decided therefore I need some decent bearings. These axle boxes will have to have proper bearings in. So I've used this piece of phosphor bronze bar, 20mm, and I managed to mill it all down to shape, and that's the T section there, so that it will slide nicely in here and there's no sideways rattle. Just a question now of cutting off the pieces. They're not very big, but I'll have to jig them up so that I can bore the axle hole through there. I'll need to have them all identical, so I'll have to fix up some sort of jig to do it, and I'll do it in the milling machine. Anyway, that's it, and that's as far as I've got so far. So the next stage will be cutting this off, and this stuff is not easy to cut. Ah well, we'll get there. Well, these are the axle boxes. Cutting the bronze wasn't too difficult. You need a very sharp blade, so I put a new one in. They're all machined theoretically to the same dimensions. They're certainly within tolerance, and they all slide nicely in their respective slots. So all I have to do now is drill a 7mm hole in the middle. This is the first one to drill. I've marked the centre as accurately as I can. Now normally I would have used my wobbler, but I felt there's not quite enough room there to get it to operate. So I'm going to rely on my measurement to be as accurate. It doesn't really matter as long as I'm within tolerance and they're all the same. Now, to make sure they're all the same, I have to drill them in the same place, and to do that I'm using this depthing gauge, which I will set on the edge of the vise, and then I'll be able to measure exactly that edge, and hopefully I'll drill all of them the same. I finished boring them. The first hole I drilled was a 5.3mm, an arbitrary size really, but it was a brand new drill and therefore sharp. I was then able to check each quadrant to make sure that it was in the centre, and any deviation I can easily cure with the hand control on the mill. It moves in 0.1 step. I didn't finish with a 7mm drill because they never drill exactly 7mm, and also it would have followed the original drill, What I used was a 4-flute end mill, and that enabled me to get it exactly in the centre and cleaned it up beautifully, and I know that that's going to be almost spot on 7mm. The 7 1/4 version of the engine had cast iron, but if I were making this to run on a track continuously, then you'd have to find some sort of lubrication for the bearing. If it runs hot, then it would seize solid and you wouldn't get it apart. So if I were to make it on a running engine, I would have cut a groove inside about 1mm deep, 2mm wide, and drilled a hole from the top, and then that would act as a lubricating tank, as it were. It would hold the oil. Each time you ran it, you could fill it up. Anyway, the next job I'm going to do is going to be to make the wheels, and these I'm going to make out of aluminium. This is a little bit too thick, but that won't matter. I can skim it down after I've made them. I don't have any bar material. This is just the right width. This is as it's come off the mill. Trouble with milling, cutting out with a 2-blade cutter, once it gets a bit hot and the surface becomes very rough because it seems to weld back on again. I should really use a lubricant of some sort, but never mind, it's done the job. And here's a finished one. It's been skimmed and it's got the flange on it and it's all ready to go on. And the centre I have reamed it to size. So the outside diameter is 56 and the tread is 53 and the middle 8mm. Well, there it is, completed. Done all the wheels, and that's how the axle boxes will fit. Simple axle made of EN1A. This particular variety of EN1A was magenta. It's usually green, but this one's magenta because it's got lead in it. My favourite steel for machining. No good for welding, of course, but perfect for machining. All 6 wheels are done, and so are all the 6 blocks. I've still got to make the keep plate, a little bar that'll go across to stop these folding out. As you can see, they're pretty small. I do have bolts that size. Now at the top here I've got all these holes marked, and that was for the original engine, which was somewhat complicated because the full size had leaf springs, and I couldn't guarantee I could make the leaf spring the right strength because I had no idea what the weight of the engine would be. So I made them into coils which were hidden behind, but they had to be adjusted, and so that was done with an Allen key through a small hole in the footplates. Anyway, that's something to think about next. So that's it for today. Thanks for watching.